Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today. This is the webinar of the Urban Transitions Alliance with the topic of strategies for accelerating the mobility transition in industrial legacy cities. For those of you who have not come across the Urban Transitions Alliance yet, this is a project that brought together a global network of industrial legacy cities, which are committed to urban transitions towards a sustainable future. This project is implemented by ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, and funded by the Stiftung Mercator. In today's webinar, we will look into the mobility aspects of sustainability transitions in industrial legacy cities. Industrial legacy cities are the main focus of the Urban Transitions Alliance. So we are looking into specifically those cities that have a history in heavy industry and industrial manufacturing and the city planning and city development aspects that come with it. So this is the specialty of, or the lens through which we will look at the mobility topic today. And some of the key questions that we would like to address are what characteristic challenges are industrial legacy cities facing in terms of their mobility transition. Another one that we want to look at is which parts of their industrial legacy can they leverage to transition to the sustainable transport system. So kind of two sides of the same coin here, where we try and look into the specifics of industrial legacy cities in that topic. And then we want to look into which short-term and long-term goals these cities pursue, and what are the main roadblocks, so what are the main challenges or hurdles that they will have to take in this journey of transitioning towards sustainable mobility. And lastly, we want to have a look at methodologies, strategies, and some examples that we can provide that are applicable or usable for these industrial legacy cities, and hopefully also other cities that are looking into the mobility transition towards sustainability. So those are the four main questions that we want to address today. I'm very happy that we have with us today Sebastian Schlecht. He is the project manager of the European Green Capital in Essen from last year, from 2017. And we also have with us Beatriz Chang, my colleague here from the ICLEI EcoMobility team. She is a Sustainable Urban Mobility Officer. As the speakers for this topic today, they'll introduce you some of the aspects of the work that has been happening in Essen, and then a couple of other examples that we can see that relate to mobility transitions worldwide, as well as some methodologies that we have developed here at ICLEI. And then introducing myself real quick, my name is Roman Mentle. I'm the Smart Cities Program Manager at ICLEI, and I lead the implementation of the Urban Transitions Alliance project. So before we get started, I would just very quickly like to make two logistical remarks. Firstly, for all of those who are attending and specifically speaking, please note that this webinar is recorded. Please feel free to and comfortable to say whatever you want, but know that this will also be on the internet later. And to minimize the background noise, we will try and keep everyone who's not speaking at the moment muted throughout the session. There is a little microphone button that you can push and you can press and unmute yourself. As soon as we give you the speaking rights through the organizer here, and we will specifically unmute you when you have questions that you would like to ask. And secondly, we would invite you very much to already send us your questions during the presentations. You have a chat function in the platform that you can use to your right side, where you can type those questions in. This is great if you can collect them beforehand, and then we will, after the presentations, look into those questions and try and pick them up, and I will then call upon you to post those questions yourself. Okay, so without further ado, I would then like to hand over to Sebastian Schlecht to start with his presentation and tell us about Essen.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, very well, Sebastian.
Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, everything is great. You can go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you very much, Roman. Thank you very much, ECLI, for organizing this webinar on mobility transition. My name is Sebastian Schlecht from the city of Essen. I am working in the Department of Environment, Construction and Sport, was project manager of the European Green Capital 2017. And I will just present you the mobility transition in the city of Essen with historic view and also with strategies that are just starting this year. So a short view on Essen. We are a town in the rural metropolis. The rural metropolis is a conglomeration of different cities with more than 5 million inhabitants. The city of Essen is one part you see here in the middle, surrounded by other cities. The city of Essen has 590,000 inhabitants. We are 200,000 square kilometers, and we are a city with a 150 years transformation process from early industrialization in the south of the area, heading to a very fast industrialization time in the north of the region, with lots of coal mining, and with the last decades with the transformation from the industrial to the green, because the coal mining stopped. So a short view back on the Green Capital. We've been Green Capital of Europe in 2017. That is an award given by the European Commission to cities that are heading for green and healthy and livable city in 12 different indicators. One indicator is also transportation and traffic and mobility. So we are in the Green Capital 2017. The next Green Capital is this year Nijmegen, following Oslo in 2019. The Green Capital title is awarded to a European city that has achieved very high environmental standards and is continuously pursuing ambitious goals for the further improvement of environmental protection and sustainable development. So we are awarded by the city, by the European Commission, for what we have done and what we are trying to. The sector of the mobility and the traffic is one of the indicators which we are not that good until now, but we have a lot of work to do. So I will show you now what is the where we come from and where we are and where we want to go in mobility transition. So here you see Essen. That is the town center, and you see a highway passing through the town center just in the middle. So that is what the city of Essen and the whole region is characterized. You see the city of Essen is here on the map, and you see the gray lines passing highways, all the city areas, and we have the colored points here are the hotspots where we exceed the EU limits of the NOx and particles in the air pollution. So we have lots of traffic passing our region, and we have lots of traffic in our cities. And in the history of the industrialization and the process of transforming our region, the whole area where we live in, the whole metropolis was built for cars with lots of big roads. And you see here the low emission zone, which was built to prevent the whole area for the fine dust particles. So we built, there was a low emission zone built in the whole area, which one part you see is Essen, where cars are not allowed to pass with no filters inside. I just tell you a little bit about our air pollution. So here you see a chart about nitric oxide. We have different hotspots here in the chart, and you see that the okay, I think you can see here. Yeah, here you see the years in the colors. You see it's getting much better from the years, but you see the last 2 or 3 years it's a little bit static and changing. So that's the air pollution is also depending on the weather and the other surroundings. So you see that we did a good job the last years until 2015, but we have not so much progress in the last 3 years in the air quality. You see the fine dust emission, the particle emission. You see that we're getting much better from 2004 to 2017. And we have, in the daily view, we have very high emissions, but in the over the year average, we are under the limits. That is a result of the low emission zone we you saw on the map before. So we come to the mobility in Essen. We have a household survey on the mobility behavior from different years. You see that the most people, 42%, and the orange number, the 13% in 1989, used the car for mobility. You see that this did not change in the next years to 2001 and 2011. The people use also buses and trains. They use the bicycle a little bit, and they like to walk, but they walk less than the years before. So you see that as the people love their cars, they love to move with the car, and they stop walking in Essen. So we have goals to reach, and one of the goals, I just show you that one, is the modal split we want to reach. So we discussed how can we change air quality and quality of life, and what goals we want to reach. So we have this modal split targets. Here you see again the survey from the last years. In 2020 and 2035, we defined the goals for the modal split to reach 25% public transport, cars, cycling, walking. So that is where we want to go. How can we do that? We need to change some things. We are a region of change. So we have a short view back. We have a history from industrialization, and we have a history of green. We have green planning from 1920s to up to now. We have 2 rivers in our town. In the north, the Emscher River. In the south is the Ruhr River, and we have green connections between these rivers, which are historically grown in the city. So what we did the last decades is to support and to extend the green connections in Essen, and with water and green, and we built cycling tracks along these green roads. We call them the ways to the water, because we have 2 waterways and green roads between. So we built a green infrastructure cycling and walking network in the city, which we are still working on. You see that we have 24 kilometer actually in the planning. You see here the dot lines in the maps. So these roads are independent from the car used roads. One big project in the whole region is one that's a highway for bicycles. That is connecting cities along 100 kilometers in our metropolitan area. This one is already finished in this section from Duisburg to Essen, and we are working on the part to the east. So this is a cycling road which is mainly built on an old industrial railways. So we have lots of old infrastructures from the coal mining and steel production, and all these production sites have been connected by railroads. So we use these old railways also for the cycling lanes and for the green roads. Short view on the bicycle traffic. So we have 200 kilometer cycle path in the green infrastructure and additional 300 kilometer main road network that is on the road or beside the roads. We use old industrial railway lines as much as possible. Also, we use, you see down here, we use the roads or the path along the waterways for cycling and walking. Here are some examples: Gruger Radweg, Rheinische Bahn, the regional, the RS1 highway. We have Emscher Park cycle path, different cycling routes in our city connected with the region. So we have several events, especially last year, to support the cycling. We have the highest potential in the cycling sector. We want to raise it from 5% to 25%. We are actually now having the next survey on the mobility, but we get the results in autumn of this year. So we think we are around 10% now. Heading to 25 is a long way. So we do little events like presence in the morning for cyclists. We had cycling events with also cycling orchestra. We do cycling tours, and we have also events like here you see the Mobility Week, the European Mobility Week event, where we show all kinds of mobility and all kinds of moving in the city. We are working together very close with our public transport company, which is a regional company. It's not only in Essen because all trains are passing to the next cities. So we have projects there like low emission buses, free bicycle transport. We have special ticketings, or we have mobile stations. I show you in the next slide. So we are not supporting only the public transport, but also connecting with car sharing and bike sharing. We have a regional infrastructure project for public transport. That's the RX. That's a new train. We'll start end of this year to connect cities from Dortmund to Düsseldorf in a very high frequency. So every 15 minutes we have passing trains, which will be more than double than now from the transport, and will be an alternative to the highway, which is connecting the same cities. We built these mobile stations, already two started last year. So the mobile station concept is to connect the public transport with train and buses, with car sharing, also with bike sharing. And you see not on the right side, we have parking slots with charging for electrical vehicles. So people can go to the mobile station and decide, I use the car, I use the train, I use the bike, I leave my bike. We also have like bike lockers for your own bike. and we will expand this concept in the next years. We support the zero emission cars to reduce the air pollution. So we have this strategy started mostly in the year of the Green Capital. We tested several electric cars in the city administration. We are now having a concept for the electric mobility of the administration, and we support also the zero emission transport or delivery in the city center with this DHL electric vehicles. Another event is the parking day. So we have lots of cars not only moving but parking, and this is using a lot of public space. So we have the parking day event, which shows how you can use the parking space in different matters and to for better life quality just in front of your door. We want to support more the walking. So this is a project, Walk With Me is a project of walking around in the city for leisure, but we also have projects to give better walking conditions to local quarters and also to connect to the local public transport train stops. We have the Eriksha project in Essen, which is starting for elderly and disabled people, but also shows how you can move in the city and what possibilities mobility has, alternatives to the car. So now I show you short the strategies we are working on in Essen. We have the air pollution control plan, which is a regional plan established first 2008, which is updated regularly. And this project connect the regional aspects because we are living in the metropolis and the cities are too close that we cannot handle the air pollution on our own responsibility. So this is like a big cooperation regional strategy. We have a lead city process that is started this year because of the exceeding the European limits on the NOx emissions. The German government started a process with the 5 lead cities to develop action plans to reduce the nitric oxide targets in 2020. So here we have a strategy with short-term projects transforming especially hotspot problems, but also base layer strategies. But the goal is to lower the nitric oxide emissions. So we have 5 groups there. The public transport and park and ride concepts is one of the main concepts for the hotspots. We want to build further mobile stations, which includes also the bike and car sharing. We want to support the hardware retrofitting of the diesel cars. We want to change the taxis to e-taxis. We will start some cycling projects, but these are also short-term projects. So these projects will be realized next year and will be effect 2020. We have pedestrian projects to promote and improve routing to the public transport stops. And this lead city process is in progress now. We don't have the funding and we don't have more details. The other plan we are working on is the master plan mobility Essen. So this is a long-term strategy where we are working on concepts for the next 10 and 20 years up to 2035. How can we be successful? What projects do we need? So we have these 3 layers of strategies: the regional, the short-term, and the long-term city process. That's from me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. This was a really fantastic look into what you're doing in Essen, both in the short term, practically, as well as your plans in the long term. I think this is great. What I specifically liked from that was also that you hinted on some of the leverage points that you have as an industrial legacy city that you can use. So, for example, the using the old industrial infrastructure of railways and so on to turn those into bicycle lanes is certainly very interesting. Maybe just a quick question to follow up on that before we go to Beatriz and her presentation. So when you look at things like the cycling projects that you have, do you have an estimate or a feeling of how much these projects impact commuter traffic versus just the idea that biking is a recreational sport that now gets more infrastructure? So how much does it really change the mobility within the city, also I would say on a level beyond the recreational aspect? And similarly, in the electric car space that you were talking about, so the city of Essen has done some great work right now in terms of looking into their municipal fleets, electrifying those with the police cars that you showed, and these kind of things with the logistics as well. How much do you see this also moving into the wider population owning, having more electric cars, and also having the infrastructure that has to come with it? So basically, to summarize the question, what is the wider rollout strategy to really permeate these kind of alternative modes of transport to the diesel engine in the city, beyond the recreational and beyond the things that are controlled directly by the city and the public authorities?
Yeah. So the cycling measurements are not very are not there in Essen. So we see that people are cycling, use the bicycle more and more, also in the everyday use. But we wait for the household survey. We already started now. The results coming this year. We hope that we see a good progress in the cycling sector. And also we want to build some measurement stations to measure the amount of cyclists in the all-day cycling. So we have this green connections in Essen for the cycling highway is also more and more in use in the everyday cycling. So in the morning and go to your job and work and family. And these roads are also very good to use with the cargo bikes and with children inside, which is somehow difficult in Essen on using the roads because we have so much traffic and too many cars. So this will be a long-term process to shift the traffic for less cars and to get space on the road for better cycling possibilities. So here we are just in the beginning, so we cannot communicate the goals now. The electric mobility sector is, we have different strategies. So we are working on the city administration mobility to be a good example. So we want to show that we use it and you can use it also. We have also a strategy to expand the charging infrastructure. We are starting now. We want to build 200 charging points in Essen in the next year. And we are working on a plan to bring them up to 500. We have this taxi project with the e-taxis in Essen, not only to reduce the air pollution, but also for being a good example. Just people, they use a taxi, they get in touch with an electric vehicle, so they can see it, they can see them driving around, and so it's also like a communication of electric mobility. the taxi. And also the charging points are visible, so the people see, there is a charging point. If I buy an electric car, I can charge it. That is very important, the communication and the information. So we don't have too much support for if the people buy the cars, we cannot give them money to support that on that way. But I think we are on a good way. Electric mobility in Germany and it all is not very we're not very straightforward, but the people who use the cars, they say, oh, it's just like a car, I can use it. So we have to just communicate and give good examples in that sector.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Sebastian, I'm very aware that you have to leave us in 9 minutes, and we will hand over to Beatriz in a second. But maybe as one last question, one last comment from your side that I would like to see if we can have that with you. There's a question that we have from somebody from the audience, and that question is essentially, do you already have an appraisal for some of the projects that you do to see the impacts, and what would be the indicators that you have? And there's a second part to that question, that is, does the fact that being a European green capital city help you for funding or for catalyzing other initiatives that you are trying to do in Essen? So if you could just briefly try and help us answer this question, that would be very nice.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the Essen was the green capital of Europe, so we got a lot of attention, and I think that is the reason why we are one of the five lead cities in the lead city process. So we hope that we get funding through this process for very important projects for the mobility transition at all. And also with the year of the green capital, we started discussion about electric mobility, which wasn't here before. We started also in this time the master plan of mobility. And I think that the green capital is not solving the problems, but it is starting the process to solve them and give them some process already started before, but the green capital also gives them good support. So we don't have the indicators and measurements for the success yet, because we are working on the strategies, but this is also a result of the job of the last years, and including the green capital, that we are working on a master plan and on concepts and strategies for mobility transition now.
Excellent. And if you would be able to give us a sentence or an impression on what you think is specific about Essen as an industrial legacy city within the mobility area, either in terms of what makes you special in terms of some of the challenges that you have to address, or other advantages that you also have as an industrial legacy city, and where you see some connections to the other cities in the Urban Transitions Alliance who you've met. Can you think of any of those points where you say this is where we have our strengths or our specialities, and we should exchange on that a little bit more?
So the Essen and the whole region was rebuilt after the war. So we had lots of destroyed areas, and the reconstruction was very car specific. So we have lots of roads with lots of parking spaces and lots of cars driving around. And we have these old infrastructures from the industrialization areas, the old factories, the railways, the waterways, the open sewer systems. We are transforming now, and we can use the potential of all these is that we have, so the potential of the roads built in the 1950s is that they are very wide, so we have space in the roads. We can build cycling tracks there, but we have to reduce traffic. But it's not that we have such little roads that there's no space at all. We have space in the city, and we have also old infrastructures we can convert into new infrastructure. So this is that we have the potential from the industrial history, which we have to use in a creative way. But this is also giving us possibilities. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sebastian. I know you have to leave us, so I want to take this minute to thank you very much for the presentation, and for your answers. This is certainly very interesting to you, and I'm hoping that that we hear more of you at the ICLEI World Congress, which will happen in Montreal this year in June, and hopefully also for future webinars. Thank you for being with us today. And with this, I would like to hand over to Beatriz Chang, who is my colleague here at the ICLEI World Secretariat, and she will help us to understand a little bit more what is happening in the world that relates to these kind of things, and also what kind of methodologies we have to offer here at ICLEI. Beatriz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roman. Thank you, Sebastian, for your presentation. My name is Beatriz. I'm the EcoMobility Officer in the EcoMobility team at the ICLEI World Secretariat. EcoMobility is one of the agenda for ICLEI on sustainable urban mobility. So today I'm going to talk about just introducing what EcoMobility is and what our initiatives are, and I will also introduce a tool for cities to measure the performance of their urban mobility system. And then I will talk about some city examples that talk about change and how did they shift from a car-oriented city to a people-oriented city, or the city level, neighborhood level, and also local level, and some of the key takeaways at the end. So what exactly is eco-mobility? It is really talking about prioritizing walking, cycling, public transport, and if needed to use vehicles, we would prefer to use shared and electric vehicles. The goal here is to reduce dependence on privately owned vehicles, but the tricky thing is also to provide it in an integrated and connected manner, because without integration and also connectivity, all these multimodal transports will not be convenient and also user-friendly. So we want to use eco-mobility as a core for cities to shift from car-oriented cities to eco-mobile cities. At the ICLEI World Secretariat, one of their field initiatives within this eco-mobility team. So one of it is the EcoMobility Alliance. This is an alliance of 23 cities from all over the world, where these are the most ambitious cities who have done something, and also who are also going to do something to improve their urban mobility system. For example, Münster is also one of our alliance city, and they are known for having the highest bike share system in Germany. And we also have the EcoMobility World Festival. So what EcoMobility World Festival is, that we have this format where one city will have one neighborhood that it will be demarcated as eco-mobile neighborhood for the entire month. So it is also an experiment for cities, city administration, as well as public to experience how it is like for 1 month of no cars and just eco-mobility type of modes of transport. And we also have just started our eco-logistics initiative. It is low, because logistics is one of the key areas that cities are struggling in order to improve their mobility system. So eco-logistics project that we are working with Argentina, Colombia, and Indian cities to pilot how can eco-logistics be taken into these countries as well. And finally, on the EcoMobility Shift, which I will focus a bit more today. So this EcoMobility Shift is essentially a quality management scheme for cities. So this is for cities, it's a tool for cities to measure the performance of their urban mobility system. And upon assessment, cities can also identify their strengths and also weaknesses to improve actions to make better informed decisions. The good thing about this shift is that it can be conducted internally by the city, and it can also be verified by an external audit and to be used as benchmarking with the peer cities. So I will talk about the process of how it is done. The first process is this assessment phase. This stage 1 of assessment phase can be done by the city or by an external consultant. Like for example, you can hire EcoMobility to do that. So this assessment can talk about the various indicators to look at how these indicators, based on these indicators, how each city is performed. And then stage 2 will be the audit phase. This is optional. Audit phase will be done by a party that has not conducted the assessment. And this audit phase is to verify all the assessment that has been done by the first party to see if the result is valid. And one of the key purpose is for labeling, because most cities, they would want to show that the political decisions has been done correctly, and also to give more motivation for the city leaders to further improve their mobility system, which is why stage 2 and stage 3 labeling is very interconnected. So these are the indicators for EcoMobility Shift. There are 3 core. The first part is enablers, because what is different about EcoMobility Shift compared to other performance measurement tool that is available out there is that the good thing about EcoMobility Shift is it looks at the enabling factor as well as the system and also the performance at the end. So the first part, where you will see 6 indicators at enablers, it is a kind of like a guidance to look at what the cities have started and also have instituted in policies, and also looking at their city leadership as well. So these are the enabling factor in order to improve the transport and systems and services, which is the second part. And these indicators, the results and assessment will be based on the soft facts as well as hard facts. So some qualitative, some quantitative as well. And finally, which is the results and impacts. In order for audit to be done, modal split is very important, because we want to see if the cities have done well and also have impacted based on the modal split that has been achieved by the cities. So this is entirely the EcoMobility Shift indicators that we have, and currently we are right now working on updating them, because this was done in 2013, and right now we would like to update it and to be a more global type of indicators in order to be used globally as well. So right now we are working with two Indian cities, Ugandan cities, as well as Chinese cities, to benchmark their cities as well, how they are doing, and what can be done in order to improve their urban mobility system. So this is the EcoMobility Shift tool that we EcoMobility have. Next is, I would also like to give some examples on how cities have shifted in the past from a car-oriented cities to a more eco-mobile-oriented cities, and also people-centric cities. So Utrecht, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, Utrecht also did not start out well, because they were also quite a car-oriented city. But right now they house the largest bicycle park in the world. And since 10 years ago or 20 years ago, Utrecht has undergone a huge transformation project in phases within the city center. You can see how cars were removed, parking places were removed, and also parks were built. But this transformation process is still ongoing right now, because what Utrecht believes is that this transformation process should be done over the years instead of just a fast, quick fix kind of thing, because the reason is also to allow for continuous communication with the people, as well as to capitalize on improved technologies that over time. So this kind of evolving change could also help society to adapt and to respond to it as well. And one of the key thing about Utrecht that is so special is that they have one narrative, and there's a very strong narrative that is not just for to be communicated to the public, but it's also a goal for the city institutions to achieve as well. So this is healthy urban living, and because of this healthy urban living as a focus, the mobility system and the health system, everything that they have done is very cross-sectoral, and also it allows for more participation and collaboration amongst the city departments as well. So that's the first one. And second one, we can look at how change can be done at the neighborhood level as well. For example, in Taipei, Taiwan, what they have done is that they slice the whole entire city into district, and from district level, they put into neighborhood level. So the narrative here is not just about healthy urban living. It's also not just about like better and more sustainable urban transport, but they also talk a lot about safety, because Taiwan is very prone for natural disaster like typhoon and all those things. So how the city is structured, how the cars are parked, how the motorcycles are parked is also very important for the city. So at each neighborhood, they call it, the city will go street by street to look at what kind of improvements can be done. And for now, they have started with 10 villages or 10 neighborhoods. And by 2020, they want to target to improve the entire 456 villages, and the results are quite clear. Based on these 10 villages that has been improved, 80% of improvement can be seen on the traffic environment, how bicycles are parked, how motorcycles are parked, and there is also quite a high public acceptance level as well. And finally, we can see on how local improvements can be done as well. So this is an example of Seoul in South Korea. So last year, May, they have commissioned this project where it's called Solo 7017. So what it was is that it was a highway that was built in the 1970s, but right now they changed the entire highway and entire overpass into pedestrian walkway, and these are 17 pedestrian walkways that goes into the core city center. And also this overpass is also called as a botanical garden in the sky. So rather than a giant infrastructure project that is seen in Utrecht, these are a so-called smaller adjustments, but for a better and more widespread urban walking scheme. And the results are very clear as well. You can see increase of customers because of walking, especially in Namdaemun market area, which they were the ones who opposed to this this infrastructural change, because they thought, hey, cars are gone, so our customers will be gone as well. But it is 1 year right now, we can see that there are 20% increase of customers instead. So the key takeaways from this presentation is that, first of all, EcoMobility Shift can be used as a tool for cities to measure their performance of the urban mobility system in order to make more informed and decision-making based on facts and figures as well. And then there are two types of shift, 3 levels of shift for cities. One is the overarching city's vision, to really talk about the entire narrative, the vision of the city, and how it can also be done on a neighborhood level, like what Taipei has done, and also on a more ad hoc project type, like what Seoul has done as well. So this kind of shift, as we have seen in these 3 cities, it does reap health and economic benefits. It's not just inconvenience, but rather it is actually beneficial for the residents and tourists themselves as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beatriz. This is certainly very interesting, and I think this complements very well what we've heard from Sebastian in lots of different ways. I think that we have a nice bit of time, a couple of minutes to answer some questions as well. So maybe at this point, I would like to introduce also to the attendees our raise hand function, since I didn't see any additional questions coming in through the chat. So when you look at your control panel, there is a 3rd button from the top below your mute/unmute button for the microphone, which gives you the possibility to raise your hand, so to speak, so to signal to me that you have a question that you would like to ask. If you have any of that, then please use it. And now I actually see that we have one coming in from Quentin. That is, what is the position of ICLEI regarding the measure of impacts and results for a city? Maybe at this point, I would like to ask Quentin to pose that question, explain a little bit more what you mean with that, and maybe introduce yourself also via talking to us. So if you could unmute Quentin real quick.
Hello everyone. So my name is Quentin, and I'm like a new intern into ICLEI, and so I would like to to have an idea about sometimes the position of ICLE, because yeah, your purpose is to help city to plan some new proposition and new ideas for their eco-mobility. But I would like to know, after this project, when you were talking about the results and the impact of the city, is that just the city who measure it, or just ICLE also sometimes made some appraisal also to monitoring the impact and to see if the EcoMobility Shift was a success or not. And also, I would like to know, when a city chooses a solution, does it as a matter to choose a long-term solution or short-term solution? Because sometimes city cannot manage to make long-term solution when there is a challenge important. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So on the first question about if ICLE or the city will do the results and impact and how valid it is. So there are two formats here right now. So if you look at the slides again, at the stage 1 assessment, so it can be done by the city themselves, and ICLE comes and verify the results and impacts at stage 2 audit and also labeling. So these can be done by ICLE separately, independent from the city. So that's model 1. Model 2 is that ICLE and the city undertake stage 1 assessment together. So at this process, it will be like the city will of course have to provide all the data, and then ICLE will of course have to still verify the data and also do the site visits to see if the data and also the documentation is really reflecting what is happening on ground as well. So I think that is also how this shift works, and also how the city and also ICLE will come in together and side by side to do this together, but it can be done at a different stage. So that's the first thing. The second question is choosing solutions long-term and short-term. So after this shift that can be done, after assessment, you look at the report, what has been done, and then what then you can see what are the gray areas that can be improved, what are the more important areas that has to be done. So of course, I think one thing is that at the short term, I think the city should go and pick up some low-hanging fruits. Like, you know, if this can be done immediately, why not you just do that? So some of the cities, they even, like during the process of assessment, they see that, for example, one bus stop, it is not really convenient for people to, for loading and unloading. So they just remove the physical barrier instead. So I think these are just very easy, low hanging fruits and short-term thing that the city can do. But of course, we would want to have like a more fundamental change, which will be which will require more time as well as a stronger political mandate. I think this is very important for cities to really undertake like a long-term change. And like, for example, like Utrecht that we have seen just now, that it can be doing something at a city-wide level, not just to the public, what to communicate to the public, but also within the city themselves as well. So I think this is also led by the mayor. So like, for of course we will want long-term change, we can suggest, but at the end of the day, it's really up to the city if they would want to, if the city buy in or not. So I think that's the two things, if that helps.
Thank you, Beatriz. Maybe to follow up on that with one more question, because we're about to conclude the webinar. You spoke about low-hanging fruits within that cities can look at within the process of the shift methodology that you're offering, but also I think this relates back to some of the things that we heard from Sebastian earlier. So there's very often you have the situation where large-scale or long-term strategies are being devised. Not all of that is easy in terms of achieving the goals, but there usually are some things that can be done immediately. So if you look at the different examples that you have, and maybe also something that you heard from Sebastian, was there anything that was striking to you as a typical thing that cities can usually look into as a first step in the mobility transition, and what would that be concretely?
The first, like, Yeah, so for example, I guess Taipei, I wouldn't say that it is a low-hanging fruit because it does take quite a lot of efforts for the city to do that as well. But one thing that's very easy for them is that if you look at this picture, the bicycles were up here, and then next you can see the plants are here. So this is something that can be done very easily, and it does not require as much investment compared to like really changing the entire overpass into pedestrian walkways. But by just putting like just pots, you can see how the bicycles are cleared and to the real proper roadways instead of at this building arcade. So I think these are just very simple low-hanging fruits that the city can do. And then next it would be like really demarcating pedestrian roadways, pedestrian walkways and cycling paths. Those are just very simple stuff that where the city can do. I think even in Essen's presentation, they also, I would say the Essen's presentation, all these low-hanging fruits has been already achieved in them. They already have like basic cycling network. All these are basic, and right now I think Essen is already moving towards the next step, which is like something that's more long-term by building the bicycle highway across these different cities, and even like they're having this e-rickshaws for the elderly people and people for disabled people. I think these are more like medium-term solution, and for the long-term solution, I think it's really also about working with the national government to look at the source of the renewable energy that is used for all the e-vehicles. If it's coming from coal, if it's coming from renewable energy. So these are the things that that long-term, I think this will be a more long-term that which will also require more political mandate as well. So yeah, these are the different kinds of things that the city can do. Maybe I can also show an example which I didn't talk about just now in Kyoto. So if you look at Kyoto, in one of the main street, they have just reduced the highway from 4 lanes into 2 lanes. So, and by doing that, they have increased the pedestrian walkways and also improved the whole bus system here as well. So this was done in just 1 year, but it has reaped very significant results, and it will lead to a more longer term 10 years project of building a more transit oriented development. Yeah.
Okay, Beatriz, thank you very much for being with us today and for answering those questions. This is really an exciting input on some various examples how cities can strategically tackle that shift, and as we will call it in the Urban Transitions Alliance, the transition towards eco-mobility. With this, I would like to conclude this webinar for today, and again thank our panelists for telling us about the exciting projects that have been done in Essen and also in some other cities around the world. I would like to make 2 more remarks on the upcoming webinars that we have. If I could get some assistance for sharing my screen again, that would be nice. Okay, so a couple of last remarks. This has been a webinar by the Urban Transitions Alliance. It's our webinar series that we have. If you have any additional questions or are interested in the upcoming Alliance webinars, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can reach us by sending an email to urban.transitions@eclay.org or visit us on the web, which you can do through urbantransitions.org as a website. And you will find the webinar series and also the recording of the webinar today on the website urbantransitions.org/alliance webinar series. And lastly, I would flag with you as a save the date for our upcoming webinar, which will be on the topic of just employment in low carbon economies. And we will have a couple of social transition insights from Charleroi and Pittsburgh as the 2 cities presenting there. And that will happen on the 29th of May, 2018 from 4 to 5:30 in the afternoon at European time. And again, if you want to be included in this webinar and receive an invite, then please email us at urban.transitions@ecle.org. Thank you very much for attending, and I wish you a pleasant day.